Hello, Tampa Bay fans. You're listening to The William Haynes Show, your online radio home for Tampa Bay sports talk and Rays postgame shows. Stay tuned throughout baseball season for live coverage after most Rays games with comprehensive coverage of all 162 games from April through October. Got something to say? We'd love to hear it. Give us a call, internationally toll-free. 877-566-1020, or send us a tweet at WHBC Official. Don't go anywhere. Tonight's program will be starting in just a couple of minutes.
HBC. When it rains, it pours, and no, I'm not talking about precipitation. It is a good evening to you, and how you be. William Haynes here, you there, here at 11:56 here on this Tuesday night. I'll be turning 18 in a couple of minutes. Officially, unofficially, who knows, but obviously, much more important than that, we have tonight a Rays 14-7 win over the Kansas City Royals. The Rays improve, tying their season high 2 games above 500, now at 10-8. They dropped the Royals now to 9-7. Andrew Kittredge getting his 3rd win of the season. He's 3-0, and he leads all Rays pitching in that category. Trevor Richards getting that MLB rulebook 3-inning save. Really an interesting game. Rich Hill had 2 perfect innings to start the game for Tampa Bay, and then in the 3rd inning came out and could not get an out. The first 5 men to face him did reach base, and that was the quick hook for them. And then, of course, the Rays had to go with the piecemeal approach the rest of the way to patch things together. Thankfully, they did not have to use any of what you would consider to be their A bullpen right now, which would be Castillo, Thompson, and Spring. So the good news is they would all be presumably available tomorrow to come in following Michael Wacha, who I would imagine would start outright with the circumstances that are going on. And thankfully for the Rays, obviously, of course, not to bury the lead, 14 runs is a season high, and also a season high 17 hits. So the offense was very, very productive. The Royals pitching was not great. Their defense was just as bad as it was a day ago. So good on the Rays for being able to take advantage of that. All kinds of extra base hits. Total on the night, I've got 7 extra base hits, three doubles, 3 homers, and a triple. I think the first triple of the year for Tampa Bay as well. And I think that ties the season high. I want to say the home opener against the Yankees, they also had 7 extra base hits. So any way that you want to slice it, the offense was performing outstanding. Most nights, especially for the Rays, when they give up 7 runs, they're not going to be coming out on the winning end. But tonight was one of the nights to the contrary, where they were able to jump out in front. They started after 2 innings with a 5-0 lead, and I think at this point they've got to be 9-0 this season when scoring first, and I think there's something along the lines of like 2-7 when their opponent scores first, which kind of makes sense with the Rays, and that's such a big deal for Tampa Bay to be able to score early in ball games, which they have had success with very recently. They get another run in the first inning, which you love to see, and then bat around the order for the first time this season in the second. So obviously anytime you score 14 runs on 17 hits in mid-April, you're going to set a lot of season benchmarks and a lot of season firsts. So yes, this was the first time that the Rays batted around. It was Kevin Kiermaier that came to the plate twice in that second inning, and it wasn't just a blowout like the final score would have you to believe. Obviously with that Rich Hill dud of a third inning, and it seems like when he lets up runs, the opponent does appear to score in bunches. And obviously, that was the case tonight with the 4 runs allowed and getting no outs into the third inning. And so at that point, that made it 5-4 Rays. At another juncture, a couple innings later, it was just 7-5 Rays. And then the Royals did continue to score. They scored a run in each of the 5th, 6th, and 7th inning, but the Rays had multiple 4-run innings tonight. Their second came in the 6th inning, and then, of course, that 9th inning where they were able to get a couple of home runs, and which right now, and obviously Kauffman Stadium, one of the harder stadiums to do that, and with it being, in the 30s as far as the temperature tonight, very hard to hit balls out of the stadium, and, any other time of the year, the Rays probably would have had twice as many home runs, at least even so far in the series, but it was home runs for Zunino and Meadows in the 9th, and then also a home run for Brandon Loud there. So at this point, what we're going to do is we are now crossed over to midnight, and I guess, I don't know if that counts as soon as it turns to the next day, if that's your official birthday or not. I don't really know anyone who knows when they were actually born. I certainly do not. So we'll count it. So you want to call in, maybe give the birthday boy a shout out, you can do that. And I know what you would much rather do is talk Rays, and either one of those you can do that. Number to call, 877-566-1020, with you for about another 30-40 minutes or so, get you up and on out of here. So what we're going to do now, take a couple minute break. When we return, we will discuss everything else that you need to know about tonight's 14-7 win. So in the meanwhile, don't go anywhere.
You're listening to the Rays postgame on the William Haynes Show. We're live most nights within 15 minutes of the final out to break down everything that happened in that day's game and take listener phone calls to get your thoughts. As always, you call the show at 877-566-1020 or tweet the show at WHBC Official. Like you to remember that archives of previous shows can be found on this show's page on Speaker.com and also on the WHBC YouTube channel. We look forward to having some of you on the show. Thanks for calling in.
Sports Radio 101.9 FM. Sports Radio 66. Sports Radio
HBC. And at 12:03 on the other side of this Tuesday evening, as we are now into early Wednesday morning, we are back on the William Haynes Show. Again, number to call 877-566-1020. This Rays postgame edition of the William Haynes Show, of course. And we continue now with our discussion of tonight's 14-7 win over the Kansas City Royals. Yes, Tampa Bay and Kansas City getting together with a 14-7 final score. What is it already? No, it's not with the Buccaneers and the Chiefs. It is, of course, with the Rays and the Royals, and I already told you that they have matched a season high 2 games over 500. They're now to 10-8, and by the way, they're 7-4 on the road. So barring that slip up where they got swept in Fenway Park, they have actually been somewhat decent on the road in their series on the road against Miami, the Yankees, and now here with the Royals. The winning streak for the Rays is now out to 5 games, so let's knock on the wood there and hope that continues. They secure, obviously, tonight the series victory over Kansas City, and I know Kauffman Stadium has been a bit of a bugaboo for the Rays, really kind of their entire history, as this is now, I believe, year 23 of the, or 22 or 23rd year of the team history, and with everything in the Bronx and now with Kansas City, it seems like during this little run that the Rays are on these last few years, they're kind of putting some of that stuff to bed, which is good. And they were saying on the broadcast with Dave and Andy on WDAE that the Rays have actually historically been pretty decent in cold weather games. I think first pitch temperature was about 40 degrees, but obviously with the sun going down shortly thereafter, that temperature continued to plummet. I know the feels like temperature late in last night's game was in the 20s, and there was some snow overnight, and we led up the show with, no, it's not precipitation, and if it was, it would have been snow probably and not rain, but there was both over the last couple of days in Kansas City, so I suppose just even a good thing that this game was able to get played, and who knows, we mentioned, I think, yesterday, the day before, the Rays, it seems, kind of got screwed with the way the schedule came out early, because all their, save for the trip to Lone Depot Park in Miami to open the season, all the road trips in the month of April are all in those cold weather cities. They have to go to Boston and New York City and now Kansas City in these frigid temperatures, and obviously the Rays accustomed to the perfect 72-degree indoor climate all the time, so that's a little bit different of a challenge for them to have to overcome, but they have certainly passed that test with flying colors. Again, this is their 5th straight win, and they secure the series victory over the Royals. They'll have a chance to go for the sweep tomorrow night. It looks like right now it'll be Michael Wacha going up against Jacob Junis. The only thing that would change on that front would be if the Rays decide to go with an opener in front of Wacha. I don't imagine that would be the case, because Kittredge pitching tonight, they've had him pitch in relief and then start the next day, but the last time they did that, it was a season-ending elbow injury for him, so I would imagine they would try and stay away from that. There's nothing wrong with a back-to-back, and they may very well start Kittredge tomorrow, but you would think, logically thinking, that they would, if they're going to use him at all, it would be somewhere in the late innings, just to I guess not tempt fate. And Wacha pitching quite a gem his last time out against the Yankees, and we'll preview that game at the end of the show, but 6 innings of no runs on just 1 hit and 2 walks. So with a guy that's pitching like that, and I know the Yankees are really in a slump right now, and they especially were on that night, I believe that Friday night game, when Wacha was pitching. But this Royals lineup, I mean, they did put up 7 runs, but I don't think, they're playing out of their mind necessarily in the way the defense and pitching is hitting. I think the Rays may very well just ask Wacha to eat some innings, whether it's 5 or 6. And as I said a little bit earlier in the show, they did not have to use Castillo, Springs, or Ryan Thompson, so they would all be available and could each, pitch an inning. So if Wacha gets 5 or 6, those guys that I mentioned could each get you 3. So, and then maybe you throw an inning of Kittredge in there or Chris Mazza, something along those lines, and they would be able to get out of that ball game. And of course, they are in this 30 games in 31-day stretch. But thankfully, on Thursday, they will have that coveted off day. So a bit of rest and relaxation as they get ready for what will be a 3-series homestand to follow. And that's something certainly that we look forward to. It'll be the Blue Jays, Athletics, and Astros. But we have to finish this road trip first. And last night, I did forget to mention, they did secure a winning road trip as well, which I think those things are always just interesting to look at, because a team that wins 100 games in a 162-game season is only winning about 60% of their games. So when you look at it from that mathematical standpoint, not that I'm trying to go all numbers on you, but that's not, that's not a mind-blowing winning percentage, but that is a lot of games to win. But my point in saying that is, in order to win that amount of games, you pretty much just need to consistently win series. And even if it's just 2 games to 1, that's still a game above 500. And That's obviously the Rays' goal each and every time they're coming out to the field. So that they were able to compile another series victory back-to-back for them. Things were looking awfully dire, I think, after that 4-game series that they lost against Texas at home. And, boy, they turned things around in a hurry. It seems like the New York Yankees always end up getting the best out of this team, and they're able to carry a little bit of a run there on after that. So enough with, I guess, the prologue, if you will. We'll get more specific into the game now. For the Rays, it was 14 runs on 17 hits, both season highs for the team. 1 error defensively for them, and then for the home team Royals, it was just 7 runs on 9 hits and 2 errors defensively for them. So yes, the defense for Kansas City does continue to struggle. It is almost like we're talking about the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl 55, but no, it is the Royals. This game took 3 hours and 35 minutes. It was in Kauffman Stadium tonight, in attendance announced officially of 4,481, which was down about more than 1,000 from last night. So I can't blame people in Kansas City not wanting to come out to the ballpark and sit in those frigid temperatures for 3.5 hours. I don't think anyone would sign up for that under really any circumstance. So probably a miracle they were able to probably pull 4,500 tonight, in all honesty. But as I said, also Andrew Kittredge getting the win, and if you're a official scoring nerd like me, obviously my goal is to score all 162 games this year, and I've got the big WAA scorebook. I'm interested in that kind of stuff, and Andrew Kittredge definitely did earn the win because he came on after that mess that Rich Hill had left him. At that point already, I want to say all 4 runs had already come across to score, and there was no outs and a runner at second base. So not only was there the man in scoring position, which was the tying run, but as Dave Wills was mentioning, there's more to it than just that. When 5 straight guys reach base, that's a momentum that carries, and that's like trying to stop a freight train by just stepping out in front of it. So that Andrew Kittredge was able to just get 3 straight outs and do it rather efficiently, by the way, throwing just 18 pitches, 10 for strikes. So I overall, I mean, under 20 pitches at least is still good, and he definitely earned his win, and he leads all Rays pitching in that category 3-0, and I think Kittredge potentially so far is having his best season as a Ray. And then getting the save just by rule, it was Trevor Richards, because no matter the score, if you pitch the final 3 innings of a ball game and your team gets the win, obviously, you do collect the save. That was Richards' first of the year. I would be inclined to think that that's potentially his first as a Ray, but I'm sure over 2019 and 2020 where they had, 10 or 12 guys collect a save, he might have been somewhere in there. But either way, I guess good for Richards, a guy that Rays fans have not been extremely pleased with. He pitched very well, I think, to the tune of 3 innings of just 1 run. It was a triple that came across to score, so 1 pitch that kind of got away from him, but did much better than his last outing, was establishing the strikes a little bit better, and he was 7 for 10 in establishing the first pitch strike to the 10 men that he faced. And so with a guy that's pumping changeups in the zone, obviously you want to be ahead in the count, and you don't want guys in hitters counts because you don't want them kind of gearing up for that pitch. So that's kind of the formula for some good innings for Richards, and that he was able to eat them in a rather efficient manner. And that's the second time this season he's pitched 3 innings under 50 pitches. I think Mazza has had that performance as well. It's even better when you win, but I think even when you lose, it's equally as important because it is such a long season, and to have guys that can eat innings. I know, Richards and Mazza aren't the fan favorites. I said last night I coined potentially the term the fan unfavorite, if you will. But they are definitely the unsung heroes, not just of the bullpen, but really of the entire team. And then outside of that, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Brent Honeywell Jr. getting his second appearance as a Ray. Was certainly a bit odd for him, just the situation that it came in. So he came out, so Kittredge had gotten the race out of the third, and Honeywell had time to do his full warm-ups and things like that. For context, he was called up. He wasn't even on the taxi squad, so they had to go through all these kind of procedures just to get him on the 26-man roster. They found out yesterday that Cody Reed, who had not pitched in a couple days, and now we know why, was dealing with some sort of finger issue. Kevin Cash alluded that it was, I guess, the same finger issue on his throwing hand that ended his season last year. So that's not great, but again, we're in April. It's not like last year where I think it was in September. And obviously, I mean, that's pretty much the end of the season. So I don't think we don't know for sure, or at least not that I've seen, but for Cody Reed to be out, they put him on the 10-day injured list for now. And so they call up a pitcher in his place, and it is Brent Honeywell. I did a little bit digging up, not that it was, incredible sleuthing job, but the last time that Brent Honeywell appeared in a major league game was his major league debut. It was last Saturday at home against the Yankees, and that came on April the 11th. And I remember listening to an interview from Honeywell, I think maybe a couple days after that game, and he was talking about that, as part of his rehab, he was finally back on pitching a 5-day rotation, meaning 4 days rest. And so if you follow that timeline, so obviously he pitched the 2 innings and I think about 20 pitches on that Saturday. If he pitched on 4 days rest, and then obviously went through the rotation today, that would put him today on 3 days rest. And obviously, I mean, he only pitched, I presume, 2 or 3 innings on that, whatever day at the alternate training site, because that's all that they have said that he's stretched out to. So it's not like, if he pitched 5 innings, he would need, a full 4 days rest. So that's just something to keep in mind, because I think at least the radio broadcasters were a little bit puzzled by that. I'm not sure if maybe the TV guys or even some of you, the fans, were curious about that move. And obviously with him, prior to his major league debut last Saturday, he had not pitched in a actual game since September 18th or 19th of 2017, which was like the AAA championship game. And so obviously he's had like the forearm surgery since, and it's been a long road back. So the last thing that you want to do in not a meaningless game, but not a game where it's like a high leverage situation. Again, we're in April. The last thing you want to do is just like blow Honeywell's elbow out. So they're cautious with everyone when it comes to the pitching arms, but I think it makes sense that they handled Honeywell the way that he did. It was a little bit interesting, I think, watching him pitch. This was the first time that I watched him on TV. I was at the Trop for his major league debut, and watching him, I think in some regards you do get a little bit better angle from the TV, just because you're seeing the pitch come kind of straight in. This was something that was curious to me as well, and I'm sure maybe some of you were thinking the same thing. We're talking about Honeywell here. Whether it's on ESPN.com or MLB at bat or whatever you use to like track the games, or even when I was at that game at the Trop, like the pitch identifier that they use with like the radar gun, all of his pitches that he throws comes up as 4-seam fastball, some at 94 around there, and some at like 84 and in the low 80s. And obviously that like can't be right. There's no way that he can just take 10 miles an hour like that off his 4-seam fastball. And it has like much more movement, but it was hard for me to identify what it was. It wasn't really a splitter or a cutter or anything like that. And it, high 80s. I was asking around a couple of people, and I guess it is kind of a screwball. And I think the reason why no website or metric can really identify it is just because there's not really anybody. I could barely even name a couple of guys in the MLB that even have a screwball at all. So kind of interesting watching that. He had trouble getting strikes, I think, even on the fastball. He was actually 7 for 8, establishing the first pitch strike to the 8 men that he faced, but total in his 27 pitches threw just 14 strikes, which is just over 50%, pitches or strikes to pitches. So not great. He did walk 2 men, did not strike out anybody. He did allow a home run as well to Carlos Santana, so checking off a couple of boxes on the big league firsts in not such a good way for Brent Honeywell Jr., and he gets through just an inning and a third. I think the Rays were hoping he could go potentially 2 or 3, but it was he pitched It looks like a pretty clean fourth inning, just a walk, and that was it for faced just 4 men, the bottom of the order. And then he faced the top in the 5th and only got 1 out, but he did face 4 men there. So he did face a total, as I said, of 8 batters and only getting the 4 out. So not criticizing or anything like that, but I just, that's just what it was tonight. And then Hunter Strickland, I think, you talk about unsung heroes. I think Hunter Strickland certainly would be in that conversation as well, with the inning and 2/3 innings that he collected, giving up just 1 run on 2 hits, a walk, and a strikeout in just under 30 pitches. Pitching on a back-to-back as well. I've mentioned it seems every time he comes up, he pitches pretty well, and I've mentioned potentially working his way into the Rays' good graces. We're not talking a bullpen or anything, but with all these guys that did not start the season in the A bullpen, like say a guy like Springs or Kittredge, now moving into what I would consider potentially the A bullpen. Springs maybe more so than Kittredge. You got to have guys that to step up, and Strickland, I think, could potentially be one of those guys. So, a 14-7 win is great, mainly for the offense, but I like to look at the pitching as well. The Rich Hill thing, for me, going into tonight, we previewed the game on last night's show, and I think I probably predicted something along the lines of 4 to 5 innings of maybe 2 or 3 runs. Well, he gets just 2, or technically 2+, as he does start a third, but allows the first 5 men to reach base. 4 runs on 4 hits, 1 walk, 1 strikeout. 40 pitches just thrown for him, 28 strikes. He was 7 of 11 in establishing the first pitch strike in the 11 men that he did face. He got through the first 2 innings perfect, and it looks like he was really rolling there, but only 1 strikeout over those first 6 outs. Something that we've been talking about with Rich Hill, not as much swing and miss. I think some people, maybe not disagreeing with me, but they were eager to point out that, hey, this is Rich Hill we're talking about here. He has had quite an incredible career, and I understand that, and I mean no disrespect to really Rich Hill's legacy. He's they don't call him, the Dick Mountain for nothing. I've been avoiding that moniker, but it's hard to avoid at times. That is what the fans love to call him. And obviously you don't get that for nothing. But he is 41 years old at this point. There's a reason why he's only making $1 million this year. At this juncture, I would say I would be surprised if we're in mid-July and he's still a part of this rotation. Obviously, AAA Durham will be going by that time, and Luis Patino, Shane McClanahan will be pitching big innings, unless something has changed, which it's not. It is Josh Fleming is still on the Major League roster, so they've already got him. I would have a hard, and I'm often conservative. I want to wait to bring the prospects up because obviously the Rays know what they're doing. If there's a reason why they're not already up here, but I would say at that point mid-July that I'm not buying that 41-year-old Rich Hill is better than something that like McClanahan or Patino could put out there. So I think this was kind of a low risk, not even high reward, kind of, I think low risk, kind of low reward move, to be honest, with Rich Hill. I can't imagine there was any kind of expectation to get him through a full season. It was not like he was going to start 30 games. Maybe they imagined towards the back half of the season and into the playoffs that he would be a piece out of the bullpen. But even that, you just look at what he's got in the tank. Fastballs that often are on the wrong side of 90 miles an hour, and these aren't Ryan Yarbrough fastballs that are sweeping across the plate. These are like straight change-ups, basically, for most. If Tyler Glasnow's straight change is probably faster than Rich Hill's fastball, so when he tries to lean back and really let that fastball fly, he could be lucky to get maybe 91 on it. When he's got 2 strikes to the hitter, and of course that trademark 72 mile an hour fastball that's got that kind of sweeping action, has not been getting a lot of swing and misses outside of that Yankee start for Hill where he gave up 4 runs over 6 innings, but really it was just that one inning where he gave up all the runs, and then the rest of the innings were almost perfect for him. The caveat I would give to that is that's a Yankees lineup that was really bad then and is still really bad now. The names are there, sure, Judge, Stanton, Sanchez, Hicks, Gardner, et cetera, but they're all off to horrible starts. They're being stricken out by everyone. I think this is not a good example, but I mean, Charlie Morton put out a pretty good appearance, and he's had a rough start to the year for the Braves. I think he shut them out, or maybe just one run over 6 innings today. So this isn't like a Yankees lineup that is what you would expect. So, and outside of that is my point, the start against the Marlins, the Rangers, and now here tonight, or I guess now last night against the Royals. He's not fooling anybody. He didn't even get through the first order a full time through before he got basically blown up. I mean, he got through, like I said, the first 6 hitters. It was the 7, 8, 9 men that were getting to him the first time through. Benintendi, Michael A. Taylor, and Nicky Lopez were all reaching base in the second inning, or the third inning rather. And it's just, and it's clear, sitting in the dugout, before those guys even get a single at-bat off of Hill, they know what's coming. He's only got 2 pitches. He throws his changeup, or rather his curveball, more than anyone else in baseball. I think it's about 42% of the time. Like I said, he's only got the 2 pitches. And when your only other pitch is a 90-mile-an-hour fastball that is straight action, doesn't have a whole lot of movement, I'm sorry, that's just not going to cut it most nights. And he's not a guy, the old saying is that, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. I don't think that this is a guy at 41 years old after being a starter his whole life is just going to suddenly be eager to come in behind an opener. I don't think he's going to be that guy. I know he's come out of the pen. He must have had to over his 20-year career. But I just don't see that happening. And he's not a guy, when you start him out right, you're lucky if you get 5 innings out of him. If Kevin Cash was setting the rotation, April 1st, knowing then, what he knows now, Rich Hill would be your 5 starter. I think he's the one that you have the least faith in. I would say even Michael Wacha I would hold in higher regard, and certainly Josh Fleming / the Chris Archer slot whenever it is that he's able to come back. And thankfully for what Fleming has put out there, that Archer does not have to rush back. I mean, I was talking to a couple fans yesterday saying that maybe Archer is just going to be an opener or something out of the pen just because the Rays have so much depth as far as the starting pitching. So I think in that regard, it's not all bad news for Hill, and I don't mean to be all doomsday on him, and I know he's kind of if you will, a meme player, just kind of a guy that's a bit obscure. He's well-traveled. He's easy to kind of joke about and have a good time with. But if you look at it strictly from a baseball perspective, from a numbers perspective, from a Rays front office perspective, this is not a starting pitcher that you have any kind of faith in going into the rest of the season. And this was only, I know, his 4th start of the year. He could prove me wrong and come out and pitch some gems. I think at 41, he's still looking for like his first perfect game, and probably no hitter as well, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know, but as it stands right now, I feel pretty confident in being skeptical about what Rich Hill is able to put out there. And that was my point yesterday, where Fleming had gone 5 1/3, and I know his first start of the year, they allowed him to face the Texas Rangers order a 3rd time through, and it immediately backfired. He allowed the first 2 men to reach base the 3rd time through, and then he got the hook. And so this time around, last night against the Royals, he faced the order just 2 times through exactly. He faced the 9-hitter the second time, got him out, and then boom, he was out of there after just 5 1/3. He had thrown just 65 pitches, did Fleming, and I think we would all agree that he probably could have gone, could have at least finished the 6th, could have potentially gotten even through the 7th. And the logic behind that, the thinking behind why you would want to do that, is so you didn't have to use all those relievers yesterday, because I think we all knew that you were going to have to use them tonight, and they did have to. No one guessed that Rich Hill was only going to get through 2+. Certainly, we were thinking maybe 4 or 5, maybe 3 at the worst, so that he only gets you 2 innings pitched, and at that time with the 5-4 lead, obviously if they were going to win the game, they were going to need 7 more innings, and if they were losing on the road, obviously they were only going to need 6 more innings. But still, that's innings that you have to cover. And Thompson pitching an inning in 2/3 yesterday, he was probably not available, and then Strickland and Mazza you had to use. Thankfully, none of the A guys, they haven't had to use any of them the last 2 days, which I think is great news that you can give them some off time. But so ultimately, the Rays were able to navigate around it. And I think that's the lesson that we always learn every time, is when we question these people who do this for a living and make millions of dollars doing so, that of course Kevin Cash, like, he has the plan. He knows kind of how it's going to go. And I think there was no question about it that he got around it. I don't think it happened easily. It was, there was a little bit of a concern there, especially when it was 5-4 and then 7-5, because you were having to put guys out there that aren't your best, and you were still trying to win the game. Thankfully, the offense was able to do what they did, and so it worked out. And one more point about Fleming last night that I didn't mention on the show, it was, in the 30s and then later in around 20 in the 20s degrees when Fleming was on the mound, and you could tell that he had trouble gripping the baseball with it. I mean, his hand was probably freezing numb, so it's understandable. So if there was going to be a time where Cash is like, all right, I'm going to give you a second chance at this lineup a third time through, we have faith in you, because obviously if Fleming is going to be a part of this team moving forward in the long term as a starter, you pretty much, you can't just face the lineup 2 times through every time out. I mean, there are times where you're going to go through a third time through. So that time, I think, eventually will come for Fleming, but that was not the spot to do so. I think, 72 degrees climate controlled at the Trop, if that game was there, you might have seen that occur. But I think with the temperature, and it was only 2-0 was the score at that time, and that was the first game of the series, they go a little bit aggressive there with the bullpen. And again, to my greater point, it all did work out in the end, but this is exactly what we were worried about. When this is what I always like to say, when people say, oh, what's the worst that can happen? This is the worst that could happen. Your starter only gives you 2 innings, and he leaves you with 7 more that you have to go and cover, totally unexpected, and throw a guy in Brent Honeywell, who I think they were probably hoping to use as an opener ahead of Walker tomorrow. Obviously, that's out the window now, as he's probably going to need 3 or 4 days rest before he probably pitches again. But with Reed on the injured list, and obviously Honeywell, he's only got a finite number of options. I don't think that they're just going to send him down abruptly again. So I don't know if he's just going to be like an opener type until maybe Archer comes back. That's what I would imagine. Honeywell will be here until they activate Archer, and then they would make that 1-for-1 exchange. And then, of course, remember, keep in the back of your mind, Cody Reed on the 10-day IL just today. And then, of course, you've got Nick Anderson on the 60-day, Chaz Rowan the 60-day, and Pete Fairbanks on the 10-day, who is already throwing at the Trop with the rotator cuff on the throwing shoulder. So hopefully he can come back sooner than later. But this bullpen is a little bit limited here already, and obviously that's nothing new. We've been dealing with this for pretty much the whole season, but especially the last couple of weeks. But outstanding that the Rays were able to navigate around it. So we discussed the pitching, so I'm not going to do that again. Everything that you need to know about that. We're going to take a short break here. When we return, we will tell you about the lineup and how the hitters did tonight. And then after that, we will preview tomorrow's game at the very end of the show. Again, if you would like to call in, share your Rays thoughts, all those great, fantastic things, you are certainly welcome to do so. I know it's 12:30 here on the East Coast. It is getting quite late. But number to call, 877-566-1020. We'll be back with you in a moment.
Hey, Rays fans, William will be right back. We're in a commercial break, so don't touch that dial. Remember, you can call us internationally toll-free at 877-566-1020 or tweet us your thoughts at WHBC Official. Also, we'd like you to stay tuned for William's other podcasting projects at speaker.com/user/WHBC.
HBC. And at 12:30 here early on this Wednesday morning, we return on the William Haynes Show, continuing our discussion of tonight's race 14-7 win over the Royals. We talked about the pitching. Now we will talk about the lineup. And obviously with the season high 14 runs and 17 hits, there is plenty to discuss. I'm not sure we would be here all night. Well, now that we're already in the morning, I mean, we could be here all morning if I went through one by one each at bat in the situation that they came up in. So I think I'll just try and give you the synopsis, the stuff that matters the most. And I think great news that everyone in the lineup was performing fantastic. Everyone in the starting lineup got at least a hit. They have, let's see, they had five players with multi-hit games, and they had 3 of those 5 with 3 hits. So a lot of offensive production to go around. A lot of guys getting some good numbers and things like that. So first, as we always do, discussing the lineup that Kevin Cash turned in today. Defense first in the outfield from left to right. It was Randy Arozarena in left, Kiermaier again in center, Manuel Margot in right field, and then in the infield from third to first, it was Joey Wendell at third, Willie Adames at shortstop. At second base, it was Brandon Lau. The first baseman was Yoshi Tsutsugo. Mike Zunino did the catching, and the DH was Austin Meadows. So you look at this lineup, it was kind of as we expected. We knew Meadows would be back in the lineup to get the lefty on righty with the starter Brad Keller there. We figured Yoshi would be in the lineup again. We knew an off day for Yandy was coming sooner rather than later. I figured maybe with the off day Thursday they could wait until then, but I think they made the smart move and went ahead and gave him an off day here. I guess we'll just say tonight. It makes the most sense that way. And so that's the way that things shook out. That was the only one that was unknown. Was it going to be? Was the DH going to be Yoshi? Was it going to be Yandy? Was it potentially going to be Mejia if they wanted to go that route? Instead, they just put Yoshi at first. They DH Meadows, and so that with not having him in the outfield, that allows them to put Margot in there, who was not someone I was expecting to be in there, but that's just the way it worked tonight. I think that was really the best way to do it, and he's certainly better in right field than Austin Meadows, and the way that the lineup shook out, the way that the hitting was ordered, Austin Meadows led off, followed by Arozarena and Wendell up at the 3-hole. Brandon Lau cleaned up finally, followed by Margot and Tsutsugo, and a bottom 3, the 7-8-9, by Kiermaier, Adames, and Zunino. I am a fan of this lineup. This was more reminiscent of kind of the beginning of the year. We spent quite a bit of time yesterday talking about Yandy Diaz as potentially being the new leadoff hitter, at least for right now. And of course, with righty lefty and things, that's always kind of subject to change, and it's not going to be static day in and day out. But I think Yandy is working more patient at bats than Meadows. Meadows was getting on base a ton, but he was not getting a lot of hits. He goes 3 for 5 tonight, and 2 runs knocked in, including his team-leading 4th home run, a solo shot in the 9th. So maybe he gets himself back on track there. And then Brandon Lau, who I think really by season's end, or really going into the season, he's really your cleanup hitter. I think he's really kind of the only prototypical cleanup hitter that you do have. They've messed with Margot in the 4 spot, Yandy, Wendell, G-Man Choi when he comes back. I'm sure he will play there occasionally, but I think Brandon Lau at the end of the day is who you really want to be in that 4 spot. He's that power hitter that you want coming up with men on base. He was on an MVP pace at times in 2020, and then unfortunately during October went into one of the worst slumps of his career, and I think that kind of stained his 2020 season. But was off to a rough start, and I guess still kind of is. He was in the midst of like, I think at 0 for 10 or 0 for 11, and then here tonight he goes 2 for 5 with a solo home run, a single, and a walk. That home run was his 2nd of the year, so that's great to see, and that is a legitimately struck baseball to get it out of that frigid Kauffman Stadium. I guess, air, if you will, to get it out of that park, or I should say. So that's good to see. And again, with all these guys that are struggling and they come up with a big hit here or there, you think, oh, yeah, maybe he's going to start turning it around. And that's where we've made some mistakes here the last couple of weeks, predicting things for certain guys. And Brandon Lau was one of them. That last game against Texas, you'll recall, in a blowout, I think he got his first home run of the year, and he went on kind of a cold stretch right after that. But hopefully he's beginning to get out of that, and I think good for Cash to kind of give him the faith. I mean, there's not that there's a difference between hitting third or fourth, but I think there is that little bit of extra, whatever you want to call it, having him as your cleanup hitter. And he did the job tonight. He did not come up. He did come up with men on base, but there was no RBI situations. He walked to load the bases in the second. He had a solo home run in the fourth, and then got a single with a couple of men on, and then did reach base via an error in the first inning. There was only 2 officially charged errors, but there were so many miscues defensively. Honestly, I can't even keep them all straight now, just 2 games into the series. But there were so many plays that double play balls it should have been that the Royals just couldn't turn. And so the point that I was making last night was it doesn't count as a hit, but especially when they're getting on base via the error with men on base already, give credit to them for just putting the ball in play, because obviously that's much better than a strikeout. And so far in this series, at least, it has led to runs, and honestly, a lot of them. Joey Wendell, who continues to, I think, be the undisputed best hitter in this lineup. He goes 3 for 6 tonight, and his average is up to 356 right now. He extended his team lead in RBIs to, I think, 12 or 13, somewhere along those lines, and he's leading the team in that category, and a lot of others. He was tied for the team lead in home runs until Meadows took that from him in the 9th inning, but Wendell, he definitely put in some work in the offseason. He's changed his game. He's getting the ball in the air a lot more, but not just weak fly balls, but really good struck baseballs. And converting them into extra base hits. He does get a double, which was his 5th of the year. I think is probably leading the team at doubles potentially as well. But getting a lot of singles, driving men in. He did bat in another run tonight. And so with him playing as best as he ever has as a Ray, you put him at the 3 spot, especially lefty on righty, and he continued to produce. So I think that's a great little development as well, with so many guys that are kind of in a slump, to have maybe a guy like him that you can lean on. Lately, they've been putting him at the bottom of the order, mainly to try and generate some offense down there, because lately that's where all the runs have been coming from, was in the middle towards the bottom of the order, with kind of your top guys in a bit of a slump. Well, today it was kind of the opposite. I mean, Adames and Kiermaier and Yoshi were still getting hits, but it was really the top of the order getting it done, which is I think really what you want, with Meadows and Arozarena both with 3 hits, Wendell 3 hits, and then Lau a couple of hits for him as well. So the Rays are known for winning in multiple ways, but, not just even with matching up the pitching and things like that, but just that offensively, there's so many ways that this team can score. Sometimes they rely on the long ball and the extra base hits. Sometimes they go games without an extra base hit and still manage to win with good pitching. Or, they score a ton of runs in Yankee Stadium, but no homers. Sometimes it's the top of the order. Sometimes it's the bottom of the order. There's a lot of ways that this team can score, and I think that's really the best case scenario, because the last thing you want to do in the sport is be static. And so, more than one way to win, that's a fantastic thing. And Cash continuing to kind of shake the lineup up a little bit, and it did work out tonight. I want to give these guys credit, and I do certainly. Some of the credit, though, has to be due to the horrid defense right now for the Royals, and just the pitching tonight was not very good. I mean, they've already blown through the bullpen completely. The Royals had to go to their third baseman, Hanser Alberto, to get the final out of the game, so that's the first position player pitching. Tag cut 4 in the comments there for that. That has been involved in a Rays game. Just to give you an idea of how, I guess, brutal of a beatdown it was. So that's what you like to see. So I guess we'll now go one by one as quickly as we can, because we're not 10 minutes away from the hour mark, and there's no need to be here until 2 in the morning. That's ridiculous. So I guess we will just be rather expedient about it. Meadows leading off was 3 for 5 with 2 runs knocked in, no walks, no strikeouts. His average right now is up to 226, an on-base percentage of 364. He did collect 2 extra base hits. In the process, his 4th double and his 4th home run. And as I mentioned, the team leading home runs with 4, so good to see him get on the board there. He did single in the leadoff at-bat as well, which was great to see on an 0-2 count. The 0-2 is a big count for the Rays so far this year, and he did get a fastball up and in, which a pitch that he could not get to last year, and he's starting to turn on a little more here this season, which I think is great. And then we'll look to the pitch that he homered off of in the 9th inning against Greg Holland, who obviously did not have his best up at 398 feet to right. On a 3-1 count, it was a fastball middle, so absolutely just obliterated there. Let's take a look at the double in the 7th. That came off of, it was Tyler Zuber, who I think is one of their better pitching prospects. On an 0-1 count, another fastball middle. So obviously credit crushing pitches that you're supposed to crush, because a lot of these guys in this lineup has had trouble doing that. So that's great to see, and that he was able to... not just with the 3 hits, but he also had a sac fly as well that knocked in a run. So getting it done in multiple ways. Did bounce into a double play, but did put the ball in play each time he came up to the plate, obviously, with the no strikeouts. And that's in 6 at-bats and, no strikeouts. So I think that is pretty impressive. We've seen him at times struggle with kind of the sliders down and away and stuff outside. But obviously his pitch is down and in. He's getting to stuff up and in a little more, and obviously when you get middle, everyone is supposed to crush that pitch. So credit for Meadows for taking care of his business there in that regard tonight. Randy Arozarena, good to see him get a ton of hits as well. He goes 3 for 6. No walks, 3 strikeouts. So when he wasn't hitting, he was striking out, which is, I think, kind of the Randy Arozarena experience right now. His average is up to 269, so he's still hitting rather nicely, and on base of 329 and a slugging of 388. So you compare that with his 269 batting average, and he is collecting a fair amount of extra base hits here so far. None tonight. All 3 hits were singled in the first after the Meadows single, so they did open the game with back-to-back base hits, which is tremendous, and that's what I love to see to kind of rattle a starter, and that certainly did have that effect against Brad Keller here tonight. See, that's what I always talk about. If you can work good at-bats in the first inning, it's not going to happen every time, but there are nights where you're going to be able to chase the opposing starter, after just maybe, 2 innings or so. Brad Keller only pitched an inning in 2/3 tonight. But back to Arozarena. Struck out with some men on base in the 2nd, which is not great to see. I'm not going to go each see what pitches he's striking out on. He's swinging at everything right now, and when you go 3 for 6, I'm not going to complain about it. A leadoff single in the 4th, a leadoff single in the 6th, and then a couple more strikeouts in the 7th, in the 9th inning, and I think played fine defensively in left field. So good to see Arozarena get back on the board with a good amount of hits, but the strikeout in his game certainly still is there. Did take pitches a little bit better tonight, though, so maybe we are turning the corner just a little bit on that. Batting in the 3 spot was Joey Wendell. Joey Wendell continues to punish baseballs. He was 3 for 6 tonight with 2 runs scored and a run knocked in. No walks, no strikeouts, as I mentioned. A 356 average, a 387 on base, so he's not walking a ton. But a 593 slugging, which is the highest of any player in the lineup tonight, and the only slugging above 500, in fact, as well. The next closest is Austin Meadows' 484 slugging percentage, and I think Yandy Diaz, who is not obviously playing tonight, is up there at the top as well. But I was just talking about the 9 in the order tonight. But Wendell off to a terrific start. He got on base in the first on a fielder's choice. That was just kind of a defensive miscue. Then hit an RBI single in the 2nd. Bounced into a double play in the 4th. Hit a single with a man on in the 6th. Flew out and then hit his 5th double of the season in the 9th inning. So was coming through in some big ways early on in the game. And at the top of the order, having him in the 3 spot. Definitely continue to ride that Joey Wendell wave, no doubt. In the cleanup spot, it was Brandon Lau. Lau tonight 2 for 5 with 2 runs scored and 2 knocked in. no walks and 1 strikeout. It's a good, terrific to see the guys not striking out a ton. They only struck out 5 times as a team, which is terrific, especially with the 42 at-bats that they collected and only 5 strikeouts. They did walk 6 times as well, by the way. But back to Lau, his average is up to 180. His on base is 306, his slugging of 328. So he is walking a lot, getting on base a lot, but obviously below the Mendoza line by 20 points is not anything to write home about. But as we say routinely with him, hopefully this is turning the corner. Did walk with some men on base. He did walk to load the bases in the second inning, actually, and was the last batter that Brad Keller faced. Hit a home run, a solo shot, his second of the year in the 4th. And let's take a look at that pitch just to see what he was able to do damage on. 328 to dead center, so absolutely crushed it. It was just a fastball down and in, and so that he was able to put a really, really good charge on that. We know what he can do with the hand speed, and the bat speed, and the exit velocity. That's definitely his game, and so it will lead to strikeouts at times, but again, did not strike out at all tonight. And his second homer of the year is great to see. Batting in the 5 spot, Margot, 1 for 4, a run scored, 3 knocked in. Interesting, you look at the middle of that order, Lau at the cleanup spot, 2 runs knocked in. And then the 5 and 6 hitters, Margot and Setsugo, respectively, each with 3 runs batted in. So all the hits came at the top of the order, it seemed, but all the runs knocked in, obviously which makes sense, comes towards the middle of the order. So great to see those guys come in and through, and Margot has been coming through a ton. Last night as well with a sacrifice RBI, and I think another one here tonight. Actually, no sacrifice, but he did walk with the bases loaded, which does count as a run batted in. He also hit a 2 RBI single in the 6th, and that was his night. So that's where his 3 runs batted in came from. And no strikeouts, putting the ball in play, and terrific in right field as well. So big Margot fan right now, a 245 average, 317 on base. So he's producing on both sides of the ball. Yoshi Setsugo in the 6th spot at first base, 1 for 4 with 3 runs knocked in, 1 walk and no strikeouts. So potentially, obviously it's still way too early to tell, but the hope is that Yoshi Setsugo can turn the corner here after that game-winning hit, the RBI double off of Garrett Cole on Sunday, and getting the off day yesterday against the tough lefty Danny Duffy, but obviously against the righty Brad Keller, who struggled. This is the perfect situation to get him back in the order, and they do just that. Like Margot, and came up right after him, he did walk with the bases loaded. That counts as a run knocked in, and then hit right after Margot as well, a 2 RBI single. So they work, pretty much identical offensive performances from those two guys. So good to see him come through, and has had a good batting eye, even with the strikeouts, I think. So, and an average, not as bad as you think. It's only 10 points lower than Brandon Lau at 170. And on base of 235. The slugging at 213, so the on base, or rather the extra base hits are not coming a whole ton for Yoshi. He's brought in as a slugger. He was one of the best in the Japan League and is still looking for his first home run, and I think only has, 2 doubles to his name on the year. In the 7th spot, it was Kevin Kiermaier. He came out of the game in the 6th inning. There was no issue as far as injuries or anything like that. Kevin Cash just wanting to manage the situation. It's very cold, and he has the hamstring issue, so obviously that makes a lot of sense for why you would want to be careful. And at that point in the game, they did have the rather large lead. So in the 3 at-bats that he got, he did Kiermaier 1 for 3 with 2 runs scored, 1 walk, and no strikeouts. Looking at what he did, he walked with, it looks like, some men on base there. I want to say that to load the bases, but it might not have been. And then hit a double in the 5th, which was his first of the season. His first extra base hit, by the way, that came in the 5th. So because of that, let's take a look at that pitch that Kiermaier hit. It was on a 1-1 count, a fastball, kind of middle, but a little bit away from him, and he was able to go the other way with it. Or rather, he did pull, or he hit it to center. So that, there you go with that. And then after that, bounced into a double play, and that was his day. And then Phillips, who came in, played good center field for 4 innings and got an at-bat, and he did walk. And did come across a score on a 2-run homer by Zunino. So that's good to see. Phillips work his base there. In the 8th spot, Willy Adames. Willie was 2 for 5 tonight with a run scored and 1 knocked in. No walks, no strikeouts. His average is at 220 right now and has been hitting pretty well the last couple of days after getting that off day on Sunday. A 246 on base, a 407 slugging, so he's getting those extra base hits. Was able to get on base via fielder's choice, another defensive miscue, a leadoff single mixed in there as well, an RBI triple to drive in Kiermaier, and that was a big theme in yesterday's win was Adames driving in Kiermaier with both of them getting extra base hits in the process, and so the same was true tonight in the 5th inning. The first triple, I believe, hit by the season for anyone on the Rays, and this was game number 18, so another thing to check off, I guess, the first list or the bingo, whatever you want to call it. And then with a ground out and a flyout in his other 2 at-bats, and played another terrific game at shortstop. So for him to be producing on both sides of the plate like he is right now, can't compliment him enough as it stands right now. Mike Zunino tonight goes 1 for 4 with 2 runs scored and 2 knocked in, a walk, 2 strikeouts for him, an average of 184. So, I mean, I think his ceiling is, 215, 220 average. He's getting on base about 28% of the time, and his slugging percentage, which is really because he's a power hitting catcher, is 474 right now. So, one of the better slugging percentages in the lineup, considering he's, your 9 hitter pretty much every time he's in the lineup. He did walk with some men on base in the 2nd. That was an at-bat that I do vividly recall. He had 2 strikes and was protecting. That was against Jake Newberry, who came in right after the starter, Keller. But he was protecting, and then all of a sudden he decided to just start taking pitches. And Ramon DeJesus, who was the home plate umpire tonight, was ruling, I think, in favor of the Rays. By the way, the umpire scorecard last night by Roberto Ortiz, and I described his performance as consistently inconsistent. As I imagined would be the case, his calls were worth about a full run in favor of the Rays in what ended up being a 4-1 win. So, not that I want it that way, but finally something goes in favor of the Rays when it comes to the umpiring crew. But he was all over the place, even though he was most of his calls favor the Rays. Nothing was consistent. I would say that this was the first game called behind home plate by Ramon DeJesus that was actually decent. Like the first actual decent umped game behind home plate, probably in like 5, 6, 7 days. So that's a good thing to see, and hopefully we are seeing more of that. An umpire crew that I don't think we've seen in a while, because I guess they umpire a lot of games in the AL Central. So, and obviously with the Rays not going there last season, these players are kind of getting reacclimated with all that process of how, a real full season should work. So that's just, something, an oddity, if you will. But Zunino, with that walk, took some pitches, which was nice. Struck out a couple times, but then in the 9th inning, Zunino bomb, number 3 on the season, a 2-run shot into the Kansas City night. Was a well hit ball. It went 434 feet to left, so he did pull the baseball there on a 1-1 count. Got a slider kind of middle down, and so Zunino was able to just lift on it, and it was kind of like that home run his first of the year in Miami, where it was like a golf swing, and that's something Zunino can do just because he's so strong and powerful that he just golfed that ball all the way out of a very deep pitcher's park that is Kauffman Stadium, and not to mention the very cold night that it was. So good for Zunino there. I mean, it wasn't that they needed the runs, but that's Zunino's ceiling is 220, I guess, to 250 average, I would say, in 15 to 20 home runs. Maybe 25 at the best. This is probably his last season as a Ray, with, of course, Mejia playing the way he is right now. And I think an interesting thing that not many people are discussing is that I think Mejia performing as well as he has is really starting to get the best out of Zunino. I think Mikey is responding very well to this competition. So that's something that I look forward to watching. And the Rays have gotten a ton of production from their catcher position this year, which is something very new to Rays fans. And another thing on the Bally Sports Sun broadcast was they're leading Major League Baseball in RBIs from their 7, 8, 9 hitters. So that was something that we've been talking about for days now, is how they're scoring at the middle towards the bottom part of their order. I believe it was Seth from LA who gave us a call a few nights ago and originally brought that to my attention, and I looked at it and he was right, and I continue to look at it, and that continued to be the trend, and to an extent was the same tonight with the middle and the bottom of the order driving in a ton of runs. It was the top getting on base and the middle and the bottom driving them in. So typically that's kind of what you want. So that's great to see. And not a bad game for Zunino. I mean, the 2 strikeouts, that's always going to be in his game, but to get a Zunino bomb, number 3 on the year. So he's on a pretty decent pace there. And so that wraps up the lineup. And again, I mentioned in a whopping 42 at-bats, they only struck out 5 times, which is tremendous for a team that has been struggling in that department, that worked 6 walks. Total from Royals pitching that they saw 187 pitches, and 111 of them were for strikes, which is, that includes foul balls as well. So that's just, they were getting, it seems like in most games the Rays have been getting a fair amount of balls thrown to them outside of the zone, and sometimes they've been able to take advantage, sometimes they haven't, and so good on them for doing so tonight, and that they were able to score 4 runs in both the 2nd and 6th inning. They scored 3 in the 9th, and then those 3 one-run innings in the 1st, 4th, and 5th. So not only were they able to score in the 1st inning, in the 9th inning, but also everywhere in between. So that's kind of everything that we were looking for was happening tonight, and I was glad that they were able to score 14 and not the unlucky 13. So everything in that regard was good, even on the superstitious end. The only thing that you would complain about was the Rich Hill start, but the bullpen in the B bullpen, really, that it was able to piece it together, and credit to Kittredge and Richards especially for their performances tonight. And for Rays pitching 160 pitches, 99 for strikes, so they were doing pretty good in that regard. And then one final note on the offensive side, they went 5 for 16 with runners in scoring position. I'm not going to read them all off. The only ones to get hits was Wendell 1 for 3, Margot 1 for 2, Adames 1 for 1, Lau 1 for 3, and Setsuga 1 for 2. So I guess I did read most of them off, but and they left a total of 8 men on base. You score 14 runs. I cannot complain about that. They were getting tons of opportunities, and they came through more than enough time. So a pat on the back for them. In comparison, the Royals 3 for 9 with runners in scoring position and left a total of 6 base runners. The Rays take the series, obviously. That's great. They had already secured the winning road trip, but now can go for a perfect road trip. I don't know how often that happens, or I guess you would say they swept the road trip. Division standings, Boston won their game today, so Tampa Bay remains 2 games back of first place, so they're in second. And then, not that you care, but in the AL Central, the Royals are still 1 game. They have a 1-game lead in first at 9-7. The White Sox just 1 game, of course, behind. So that's where we leave the game tonight. 14-7, Rays 10-8, 5-game winning streak right now. Knock on wood again. So we wrapped that up relatively quickly. So that's kind of good to see. So now what we'll do is preview tomorrow's contest. It's going to be another game at 8:10. Again, that will be my birthday proper. Again, now that we're in April the 21st. So I'll be out on the town celebrating all those things. So I won't be on the air. I'll watch the game during the off day and score it, and so that we can discuss it on what will be Friday. So the next time we will be on the air will be Friday night after the Rays game at the Trop against the Blue Jays. So obviously recap that Blue Jays game, but also talk a little bit about the series finale in Kansas City. So, but that game that we will be discussing, it's going to be Michael Wacha, who was recently just announced from Tompkin on Twitter that he will be starting outright against Jacob Junis, both right-handed starters. The Rays going for the sweep there. So far on the season, Wacha is 1-1 on the year with a .2 earned run average. His last time out against the Yankees, a gem spun by Waka. 6 innings, no runs, just 1 hit allowed, 2 walks, 9 strikeouts, 93 pitches. So he is fully stretched out at this point. I think the Rays would expect him to maybe go 5, maybe 6 innings at best. And after that, you've got Castillo, Springs, and Thompson on 2 days rest. They can each give you an inning. So let's say he goes 5. And then obviously the 3. So if you win, you're going to need 1 more. And obviously if they're losing, you're not going to probably put Castillo maybe out there. And maybe you go Springs for 2 or something with the off day to follow. But let's say they're winning. So Waka for 5. And then they have the option for that 6th inning. Do they want to have Kittredge going to back-to-back? They have Mazza on 1 day's rest of 1 inning. Strickland is on a back-to-back and pitched an inning and 2/3, so he's probably out. So that would be kind of their only option, is if they wanted to go Kittredge or Mazza for the 6th. And then they have the 7, 8, 9 lined up of probably what would be Thompson, Springs, and Diego Castillo in a potential save situation. So let's certainly hope that that's the way that the game plays out. And then across from him, the 28-year-old right-hander Jacob Junis is getting the start for Kansas City. So far in the year, Junis is 1-0 on the season with a 150 earned run average. His last time out, it's been an interesting start here for Junis. At his last time out, 5 innings, 2 runs on 5 hits against the Blue Jays, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts, 81 pitches. His first 2 outings, on April's 3rd and 4th, he pitched just an inning and like 15 pitches each. And then 3 days later, he gets a 5-inning start, and then it's like immediately, I guess, fully stretched out. So I don't know exactly if I thought he was part of their starting rotation. I guess maybe it was an injury or something. So I'm a little bit surprised about that, but it looks like he's fully stretched out. And his last 2 starts, 5 innings, no runs against the Indians, 2 runs against the Blue Jays, so probably 4 or 5 runs, or I would hope so, but probably 4 or 5 innings of, maybe 2 or 3 runs. Hopefully, if this lineup can continue to stay hot. The way baseball works, the Rays, who knows, they could probably suck tomorrow offensively just because they used up all their runs and extra base hits and things like that. But hopefully, with the way they've been dominating lately, that they can continue to keep this going. And then we look ahead to Friday's game. So after the game tomorrow, they get the off day Thursday, and then they return to Tropicana Field for a 3-series homestand, and to open against the 7-10 Blue Jays. At least they're 7-10 for right now. It will be the lefty Steven Matz against the righty Tyler Glasnow, as the Rays at that time will make their way through the rotation a 5th time through. It's hard to believe we're already that far into the season. So Steven Matz, so far, the 29-year-old right-hander is 3-0 on the season with a 147 earned run average. His last time out against the Royals in a 7-inning game was 6 innings, 1 run on 2 hits, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts. And all of his other starts were pretty much identical. 6 innings of 1 run against the Angels and 6 1/3 of 1 run against Texas. So all pretty much 6 innings of just a run. So I'd imagine the good chance that pattern continues. He was not good last season for the Mets, but maybe the Blue Jays are getting, maybe a spark out of him. And Tyler Glasnow, his last time out was 5 innings of work, 1 run on 2 hits. Obviously, a day where he was not feeling very well, was dealing with all kinds of stuff, the cramp in the hand, and having trouble gripping the baseball. Lost his control there for a little bit. But does have a couple of 6-inning starts, that 7 2/3 start against Texas where he gave up no runs. So that it's a tough Blue Jays lineup, and it looks like they're going to have George Springer back by that time. So I don't imagine like a no-hit bid or anything like that, but you would hope 6 or 7 innings of maybe no or just a run if he continues on his pace as an ace. He's 2-0 on the year with an 0.73 ERA, if I didn't mention that. So good things all around for the Rays. Hopefully, by the time we talk to you next, we have another 2 wins to discuss. Again, we'll be on Friday after the game. That's a 7:10 start, so we'll be on, at 10 or 10:30 or 11. You know the drill. You know how it goes. Thank you for everyone who tuned into the program. I thought it was a pretty good show tonight. A birthday edition the birthday edition of the Rays postgame edition of the William Haynes Show tonight, as we are now at 1:08 in the morning here on this Wednesday morning, April the 21st. So, Rays game tonight. Hopefully they can complete the sweep against the Royals, the off day to follow, and then hopefully Glasnow pitches a gem against the Blue Jays. Go Rays right now. The 5-game streak hopefully continues. We'll talk to you Friday.
Sports Radio 101.9 FM and Sports Radio 66. The Fan.
HBC.
News.